Okay, so welcome back. So we are going to talk about equivalent fractions today. So what are equivalent fractions? Equivalent fractions are fractions that represent the same shaded region or the same proportion of a whole. Okay, so we're going to talk about proper fractions in this case, but this expounds to mixed numbers as well, as we'll see. But when we're talking about fractions and equivalent fractions, we're saying, hey, two different fractions that basically represent the same proportion, okay, or the same shaded region, as you'll see here. So in this case here, again, my drawing's notwithstanding, but again, just assume that these are equally divided, okay, and that each one of these represents a whole. So we know that we can represent fractions like this, and we can see that these all mean the same thing because they all give us 1, right? Remember, 1 divided by 1 is 1, 2 divided by 2 is 1, 3 divided by 3 is 1, okay? But we also, by the definition of fractions, we got 1 part out of 1, so that's a whole. 2 parts out of 2 is a whole, and so on. So when we want to represent, let's say, 1/4, well, that means if we have 4 equal pieces, we're going to shade in one of those. Now, if I look at these other ones, and so in this case we have 8 equal pieces, and notice that if I shade in the same area here, so 1/4, right, 1 out of 4, so if I shade in these two, it's the same shaded region. And then if I take it and I divide it into 16 equal pieces, well, if I shade in these 4, well, again, if you look at the area, it's the same area that's being shaded in. So this is how many equal pieces? This is 8. There are 8 equal pieces. How many pieces are shaded in? 2. And now, in this case, we take the same whole and we divide it into 16 equal pieces, and we shade it in 4. Well, what does this show you? Well, these 3 fractions are all represent the same shaded region. So these 3 fractions are the same. They're equivalent. So that means that 1/4 is equal to 2/8, which is equal to 4/16. Okay? And that's the idea of an equivalent fraction. Okay? So, is there anything else I want to say at this time about this? Okay, so one more thing. So how do I want to say this? Equivalent fractions you could look at as representing a family of fractions, okay? So these are all equivalent, and so these would represent a family of fractions, and of course this would go on, and fractions go on for infinity, okay? But they represent a family of fractions. And so the family, we usually want to represent that family using the fraction in lowest terms, okay, or simplest form, okay, and that's the one that's represented by the first one in the bunch, okay, and the first one in the bunch is the one that cannot be divided on the top or the bottom by any other number except for 1. So in other words, the greatest common factor of the top and the bottom is 1. If that's true, then it's a fraction in lowest terms. Okay, it's simplified, is what we say. And so 1/4 would be the form of this family of fractions in lowest terms. Okay? And so that's what we mean by having a fraction in lowest terms. The greatest common factor of the top and the bottom, the numerator and the denominator, is 1. No other northern natural number will divide them. Okay. See you next time, and we'll do some examples.